días, muy buenos días a la Casa de la India, al webinar de la influencia de los Beatles en la India. Tenemos el gran privilegio de estar aquí en la Seminci, en el Festival Internacional de Cine de Valladolid, en su 66 edición, con todo el equipo del proyecto Beatles And India, que ha estado aquí para presentar su película y también para ofrecer un concierto. Esta sesión será en inglés, los participantes son en inglés y se podrá ver en el canal de YouTube de Casa de la India, también en el canal Seminci y en colaboración con el Nehru Center en Londres y también Indian Music Experience en la India, en Bangalore. A warm welcome to Casa de la India, which is hosting the webinar, The Beatles' Influence on Indian Pop Music, which is hosted by us in collaboration with the Nehru Center London and the Indian Music Experience in Bangalore. So we greet all the viewers, not only in Spain, also in the UK, in India and the world over. We're here at Casa de India, Valladolid, Spain, surrounded by this amazing ambience of music floating above us. This is the exhibition, The Beatles in India, which has been produced by Casa de India for the Valladolid International Film Festival, Seminci, which is premiering the Beatles and India documentary film, directed by Ajoy, Bose and Peter Compton, and produced by Silver Screen. We have the entire team here. We will introduce you to the protagonists and the minds behind this amazing project, as well as the musicians, which had a beautiful, wonderful performance yesterday as part of the festival. We will introduce each one of them. This, as I said, is a project that has been in the making for over 2 years almost, and finally we are here at Casa de India, surrounded by the exhibition, The Beatles in India, along with the film, which had its premiere yesterday, and the Inner Light tour, music tour, which is part of an album by the same title, The Beatles in India. Before I proceed to introduce you to the speakers today, we would like to give the floor to our dear friend in London, the director of the Nehru Center. This is a collaboration, as I said, with our, I would say, sister organization, an entity that's sponsored by ICCR. Casa de la India is a foundation set up by the Indian Cultural Center, the Embassy of India, the University of Vallaodlid, and the City Council of Valladolid in 2003, and we serve as a platform for Indo-Spanish relations and to promote Indian culture in Spain. If you're ready, are we ready for the message, Alvaro? Can we proceed with the message by Amish Tripathi? Okay, this may take a little of time. We're still receiving the images from London. In the meantime, let me introduce you to the speakers today. Ajoy Bose is a director, along with Peter Compton, of the film The Beatles in India. Reynold D Silva, the producer of the film and CEO of Silver Screen Records. We have Mali, a musician from Chennai, based in Chennai, and Tejas, who is now living in Bombay, I believe, and Neil Mukherjee, also Bombay-based. The team has come especially from India, musicians, for this tour, which is began yesterday and is continuing in Mallorca and Leon, in Leon tomorrow. So if you want to catch the concert, you'll have to rush to Leon, which is an hour away from Valladolid. So musicians came especially from India for this, and the team, and Ajoy Bose, of course, from Delhi. Though he's a Bengali, he lives in Delhi. One of our top collaborators of Casa de India as far as Beatles and contemporary Indian culture is concerned. Reynold and Pete have come all the way from London. I think we're ready for the video. Okay, we'll listen to the message by Amish Tripathi, Director General, Nehru Center, London.
Namaste, my name is Amish Tripathi and I'm the director of the Nehru Center. The Nehru Center is the outpost of ICCR right here in the UK, and the outpost of ICCR in beautiful Spain is Casa de la India. The director of that fine institution is my brother-in-arms, Guillermo Rodríguez. My partner in crime, Guillermo, is putting up this wonderful exhibition in Casa de la India called Beatles and India exhibition. This is a part of the Vallaodlid Film Festival and a documentary with the same name directed by Ajoy Bose and Peter Compton will also be showcased at this exhibition and Casa de la India. As a part of this, we're also going to have performances from wonderful young musicians who are a part of the documentary. Tejas, Mali, and Neil Mukherjee. I'm sure you love this documentary, and we are delighted at the Nehru Center to have our first joint program with Casa de la India, our cousin, our brother organization, part of the ICCR family, and we look forward to this being the first of many more. And of course, since I'm a Beatles fan, I'm going to apologize in advance for this joke, but I can't help myself. It took Beatles to get Casa de la India and the Nehru Center to come together. And of course, we will come together much more often from now onwards, and you'll see many more joint programs from Casa de la India and the Nehru Center from now onwards. And I hope you enjoy this wonderful presentation that is being put up. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Amish, for your kind words. It's really a privilege to collaborate with the Nehru Center, a center which I visited many times. I wish you were here now, live, but it wasn't easy to have you over. We still have limited travel, and I know you had other commitments elsewhere, but I hope next time we can do a session here or in London. We now move straight into the session. I would like first to introduce our dear friend Reynold D Silva, the mastermind, as I said, behind this project, both the album and the film. We are quite spellbound by the reactions we're getting from Spain and other countries, and you've probably noticed yourself the reaction that your project is getting from all over the world. The album is being released, I believe, tomorrow or day after tomorrow internationally. What prompted you to tell the story the way you've told the story in the film and the project of bringing out an album by Indian artists, the Indian perspective? I'd like to know what prompted you to give that angle to the whole project.
Insanity. Hello, world. I'm sure Amish Tripathi didn't realize the pun about come together of Nehru Center and Casa de la India. So the idea of the film just was in my mind for years. When we worked with Handmade Films in the late 80s, this George Harrison's company, we released 4 of their soundtracks. And it was around 2015, I think, 2015, when a couple of people literally within a few weeks talked about the ashram opening. And I thought, oh, well, that's the time where we should start doing the film. And then what happened was that we were sidetracked because we did a film on Sgt. Pepper's 50 years ago today. So that took a backseat. But then we met Ajoy, and he had just written his book, so we decided to then embark on that project. With regard to the influence of the Beatles on Indian pop music, Indian pop music in the 60s was basically 95% songs and films. There wasn't really an independent scene that there is today. And I think I've got to be careful the words I choose, but there are a lot of songs in Bollywood and Indian film music where they have borrowed Western songs and Western melodies. Songs of the Beatles, as well as songs of ABBA, songs like Final Countdown by Europe, and also songs like Thriller by Michael Jackson. You can trace these songs in a lot of Indian films. My background is that I played in a band in Bombay in the 70s, the early and mid 70s. And when I came to London, people were saying, you know, did you sing in Indian? Well, there's no such thing as Indian, but no, we sang in English. We did songs of the Doors, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, a lot of the, you know, the songs of artists from the 60s and 70s. And it was important that when we did this film, that I showed that there was a scene in the 60s. Okay, it was confined, it was niche because it was confined to the English-speaking middle class. And there were hardly any venues. They were confined to the hotels and a few discos like Slip Disc in Bombay and Trinkers in Calcutta. And it was important to show the perspective of the musicians in India at the time, as well as now. And that's why we have Tejas and Neil Mukherjee, because they are very much the musicians of today in India, where they are making a living out of making music rather than the old days where, you know, people had to have 2-3 jobs because they play for the love of it, really. And you know, this whole project came about from, you know, the three of us here. It was a collaborative effort, and it was for, you know, a standpoint of, we came from a standpoint of love, really, love for the Beatles, love for the 60s, love for the era, you know, as simple as that. And I think we really captured that. And I think the reaction that we're getting from the film around the world and the album that we've done really shows that. And so there's no Beatles music in the film. It's not really a music documentary. It's actually it's a story. It's a chronicle, a historical document, really. But what we've done is an accompanying album of songs that the Beatles wrote in India or that have a Beatles connection. And that album is being released on Friday, the 29th of October, digitally worldwide. And hopefully it's going to do well.
Yeah, sounds good. It's quite timely because we tried to do this last year. It wasn't possible because of COVID, but I think maybe it had to wait, and things have, you know, the riper the better, and the fruit is now very tasty. I think we've got so many people coming to the exhibition, people asking about the album. It's almost selling like hotcakes here at the venue, and I wish the project all the best. It'll tour hopefully around the world. Hopefully we can put something together in other parts of Europe and America, who knows. This is just the beginning. So congratulations for this kickoff. Ajoy, you are actually a TV commentator, political commentator, a journalist. So in your double capacity as an Indian citizen of that generation, urban, middle class, if I can say, citizen who has lived in different parts of India, who's been part of this burgeoning and the Indian 60s and 70s kind of change of lifestyle. How would you, and how was your personal experience in those days when you were a teenager, and your perspective looking back when you were invited to this project?
So there's a huge amount of nostalgia, clearly, because I was a teenage rebel in the 60s when I discovered the Beatles. And it was like Beatles were growing up and I was growing up. And there was a huge synchronization of the band changing its music from their early songs to new types of albums. We used to wait eagerly for those albums. Anybody coming in from abroad used to bring these albums. The album which was produced in India came later, some months later. But it was the 60s. And I think that the Beatles inspired me in ways which are very difficult to describe. But when I look back, I wouldn't be myself without the Beatles, because they were not just musicians for us. by a strange paradox, the Beatles were seeking ancient wisdom in India, but for us, they were symbols of a new Western culture. And I think that for us, the post-colonial generation of young people in India, we completely were taken by this fantastic new Westerner, the new Britisher, who kept long hair and who praised India, and who discovered Indian music, culture, spirituality in ways that made us look differently towards the sitar, towards Indian culture, because we were westernized. We were, of course, multilingual, because growing up in Calcutta, you were also into Rabindra Shungit. We were into many other sort of local, songs and local culture. But of course, Western culture, because the British left such a strong influence in Calcutta, particularly. We really appreciated all of the Hollywood jazz and the old pop songs, the old rock and roll songs. But the Beatles were different. The Beatles really completely changed, I think, our lives. And along with Bob Dylan and the Rolling Stones and all the rock groups which came afterwards, I think they were an integral part of my life, much to the irritation of my father, who was a senior bureaucrat, who felt that I was wasting my time with all this, and that if I wanted Western culture, it existed in Bach, in Mozart, and certainly not these guys who were screaming away and their fans were screaming away and they kept long hair. I remember the fiercest fights I had with my father was over the length of my hair. And well, I am so thrilled that half a century later, I wrote a book rediscovering my band, my favorite band, and really understanding the influence that India had on the Beatles' evolution, and in return, how much the Beatles gave India. And now we have this film, which is quite amazing, that how the book has turned into a film and taken it further. So I'm so happy with the team. And now there is this album of really gifted young Indian rock stars who have really given their own interpretations. And it just shows that somebody like me from the 60s, and who were the Beatles generation, can, the legacy continues, the magic continues. It's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale that just doesn't go stale.
What I like, thank you, Ajoy. What I really enjoy and appreciate about this project is this cultural dialogue, and the fact that your team is multicultural and looks at things from both sides. So you have two directors. It's beautifully crafted and conceptualized. We have Ajoy from India. Now we move to the other side, and to the other, the Beatles are from the UK. They are from Liverpool. There's a generation in the UK, of course, that was very close, and the Beatles is like a national treasure for them. Pete, you're British.
I'm British, yes.
You're British.
Yep.
You live in London. You have the other perspective as a teenager, I suppose. The way you looked at it. How was first as a personal experience, and then you can talk about the film, and we hope to be able to show the teaser, the trailer of the film as well. When the Beatles suddenly got interested, and later it went on with George's interest and Ravi Shankar and so on, did that change also the perception of what you thought of the band and how you thought of India? As Ajoy said, it transformed the way he looked at India. That which is quite odd in a way, because it's British. It's a different kind of colonization, but I think a very fruitful and I would say, cross-fertilizing colonization, which is beyond the economics and beyond politics. In your case, and then we talk about the film.
Sure.
Can I just say, Peter's British now. I think he was Indian in a previous.
Oh, so maybe you grew up in India. Who knows? You know, we don't know.
That could be it. I think what people don't realise, the era of the Beatles in the 1960s, you had to buy the records. It's not like now where you could have instant access to everything. You would have to go out and buy the records, or hope to hear at a certain point on the radio and that. So it's very much a different world. So when the Beatles go to India, it's kind of seen as a joke across the world. Really, you can see in our film that the newsreels are very humorous. Maharishi is seen as a strange man that suddenly appeared, and the Beatles have like completely dropped everything and gone out to India. And there's very little media coverage then. So although we have a lot of film of them in the ashram, this wasn't coming back to the rest of the world of Great Britain. So no one really knew what they were doing until they came back. So the mysticism was seen as almost comic, and there's a film.
That's British humor, you know.
British humor,
fun of everything.
Yes, and there was a film made at the time called The Guru, which came out in 1969 with Michael York, and it's the story of a pop star that follows a Maharishi figure, and again it's played for total comedy, but made by an Indian director, and it is a really good film. It kind of rebounds the joke on Western eyes. It's very well worth seeing for a film. It's great.
And in the coming to the film, when you work together as co-directors, I think that also brought in both the British and the Indian perspective. There was so much material, I suppose, which was out there, and a lot of it was like almost a puzzle of fragments and elements you've beautifully crafted. I think it's like I would say it's a colorful tapestry of material and threads put together beautifully and in a very important narrative. Yes. When you read his book and then got about the script of the film, that whole section towards the end where you actually interview Indian musicians, asking them, it's a big chunk of the film actually.
Yeah, it is.
What was the objective of? Do you want to highlight something that the story has never been told that way, and what the Indian, coming back to the Indian pop scene, how it is reflected in the film?
Well, it's a fascinating contrast between early on in the film we're looking at musicians from the 60s who are heavily influenced by the Beatles, and as time moves on, it's still happening. And the musicians from the 60s like Bidu, etc. As he makes the point that he's heading west and the Beatles are heading east, which is a fantastic contrast. But how in the 60s they appreciated the harmonies, that's quite clear in the film, that's a big deal with the Beatles, obviously. But obviously our contemporary musicians are appreciating the same thing, and it's a great voyage of discovery. It's an amazing catalogue of music. And it all stems, as we point out in the film, it all stems from 80 years ago in World War II, where George's mother, with George in the womb, is listening to a BBC programme that goes out every Sunday morning for Indian forces abroad, which went out at 10:30 in the morning. She used to do her cleaning in the house and sit down and listen to it. So all this, I think there are psychological theories that people absorb things in the womb, and obviously this was absorbed into George. So, and it works. The whole reincarnation thing, which is speculated at the time that George was born in India. So at some point,
I think that it's quite brilliant because you're coming up with these ideas, of bringing in these historical contexts is there. But so what's so special about the film to me is what we've already mentioned, the intercultural aspect, but then you have the intergenerational aspect. I mean, actually, it's a journey in time. You start in 42. And you end, in the present, interviewing these young musicians. Some of them are here. They also appear in the film. So before we move to the musicians, we have a chance to see the trailer which is out there. The film was actually released in London, I believe, in June, in the month of
Correct.
June.
Yeah.
The Asian Music Festival.
And it's now going to the festivals across Europe.
Belgium. And where else, Pete? Vallaodlid and then Mallorca. But the actual films, now it's been sold to like the US, Canada, South America, Japan, Italy. It's slowly building momentum, basically. Yeah.
Wonderful. Alvaro, if we're ready for the trailer. Thank you.
Did you enjoy the trip over to India?
The journey was terrible, but the trip was all right. We had a nice holiday in India and came back rested.
When George and we got connected, it was like wildfire, you know.
Paul phoned George and said, there's this man called Maharishi who's going to come and talk about meditation.
Maharishi was the most powerful, magnetically charismatic person I've ever met.
Their manager, their best friend, was now gone.
He was found in his second floor bedroom just after 2 o'clock this afternoon.
For that moment in time, Maharishi replaced Brian.
The Beatles were coming to stay with the Maharishi. The whole world and its media is going to be here.
The huge crowd assembled here outside, looking the new face of the English people, like the big hairs and all that. It was a craze.
They had descended in our part of the country and they had embraced the spiritual narrative of India. We felt, look, they are one of us.
It was really some trip, the biggest trip I've ever had in my life, you know.
There was no pressure from the outside world. Their creative juices just overflowed.
They said there was a CIA camp in the ashram getting all these foreigners to destabilize India.
Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, a great spiritual leader or maybe a great charlatan and crook, depending on which side you're looking at him.
The happiest time of my life, one of the happiest times is in India. It was just such a groove. You know, it was such a pure thing.
¿Sabes que hay una forma muy estúpida?
And there's this galaxy of personalities, not just the Beatles. You have Mike Love, the Beach Boys. There is Mia Farrow. You have Donovan, Paul Horn. They all come together and they spent weeks, in the case of John and George, longer than Paul and Ringo, who left earlier. And what do they do there? Of course, meditate. Maybe get detox. It's a detox trip for them as well. It's mentioned in the film. But they also create. They compose, and a lot of the musicians that were there witnessed, and people who were part of this whole team, how it had a positive impact. Nature. We have recreated here, as part of the exhibition, these pieces of cloth, I would say almost saris floating above us. They tell the story of how some of these songs, I believe about almost 30 or over 30 songs, were written in Rishikesh. We have a copy, an original of the White Album over there as part of the exhibition. We are, surrounded by these songs, which are the children, the babies, if you want, of this encounter with India and the journey in 1968. But we also have the magic of musicians who come bring these to life. It's not just about reproducing the songs as they were in the exhibition. What we actually listen to are the versions that are captured in this wonderful album, The Beatles and India. I believe 19 songs have been produced by a range of Indian musicians. Some are based in London, some are in the UK. You tell us more about that, how you got this galaxy of young and promising, and some actually quite famous musicians together. Three of them, which are actually also featured in the film, are here with us today. It's a privilege to introduce Mali, Tejas, and Neil. First of all, congratulations for your success yesterday, the live concert you had as part of the festival. And please comment also about your experience of being able to show your work live to Spanish audience. First, we turn to Mali. We're very proud to have you here. It's a privilege. Can you tell us, first of all, you and the Beatles? I mean, we have different generations here coming together. When you first heard in your youthful years, as a teenager, you're not a teenager anymore. We can always speak about our memories as we go along. We realize where they came from. We don't know. How did you first come across or listen to the Beatles? It was obviously not in the 60s. We have already heard. We've heard from Ajoy that it's enduring. It's passed on through the generations. And then when you were called on the phone or maybe by email, say you want to be part of this project, the film and the album, and then coming on tour. Please give us your impressions.
So I grew up in the 90s in India, and that was a time of cassettes and CDs. I feel like we didn't have the experience of waiting for someone to bring us a record from abroad to listen to the Beatles. And even though it was 3 decades later, their music was still ubiquitous in India. In my family, every time the family would meet together, there would always be a couple of Beatles songs I would play. And so my experience with them was, they were a foundational band. They were like a standard from which a lot of bands borrowed and sort of like built over what they provided to the world musically. I have one anecdote, which is, I think, how Reynold even reached out to me. And that is, I was quite a daydreamer as a child. And I never liked the fact that I was always spaced out. But then once one of my aunts, because she knew I liked music, she got me a t-shirt with John Lennon's quote from Imagine. It said, "You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one." And I wore that t-shirt to death, only because it represented me so much. And in fact, I wrote a song called Dreaming, which was inspired by that quote. And that's another example of how the Beatles were inspired by India, and then we as Indian pop musicians were inspired in return by them. And I love the fact that the Beatles music and also the lyrical content was so extensive. It wasn't just one sound, it wasn't just one thing. It was like an entire buffet of options of different kinds of musical explorations that they did. And I think as a pop artist, that's the most inspiring aspect.
Thank you, Manny. I'm very grateful for that you brought that up, the message, because after all, we haven't spoken about maybe the third aspect. We've spoken about intercultural, intergenerational, but what is this really about? It's not just music, it's a message, and how relevant it may be today. You can look at it as, yes, spiritual experience at that time, inner search. After all, that famous song Inner Light, which is also part of this, we all search for our inner light. It's about peace, yes, but it's also about, and the experience we had yesterday listening to your music. So it's your music. It's your music with the Beatles, sure, on the Beatles, but they come along as they are there, but it's your music as you perform it. It's this feel-good experience. It's the expression of joy. It's the expression of freshness that comes through that people experienced in the 60s, of hope, of regeneration that we require, we need now. And we should not forget, of course, the pandemic, the corona crisis we've all gone through in the last 2 years, which is somehow also connected to this project, because part of it was created and was delayed, but fortunately a delayed project, as I said, maybe also a good thing. Once it's coming out, it's really being thought over, and how it was to work during those difficult months, and how it may have inspired you and others. So that universal aspect of hope, of that generation, of that vision of a future that is perhaps lacking. We're more pessimistic perhaps than in those days, but we rely on you guys, the new generation, to give us that spirit of hope, and it has to be contagious. And I know you guys are contagious. You proved that yesterday. Neil, you were the crowd puller. Sorry, Tejas, you were the crowd puller yesterday. You were able to have this magic around us. How do you tell us about the creative process? Creating this music, bringing this out of your mind and heart.
Well, just to preface this, I mean, I think the interesting thing about the Beatles, and everyone has some Beatles story. I think there's something so universal about that. You can call a film The Beatles and insert any country, any title, and there will be some story to tell. And I think that's so fascinating that everyone has. Like for me, my journey to the Beatles is through Napster when I was growing up, and we were illegally downloading music, and there was a top 500 best Rolling Stone songs, and there's so many Beatles songs on that, and I was like, oh, these guys they're pretty good. So I think everyone has a story in regard to the Beatles, and I think that's quite awesome. And the interesting thing about this project is how we've managed to rediscover them in a musical sense. I think we all grew up listening to the Beatles at a formative time, in our writing, in our creative process. But now we've kind of come back to it, and we're listening to all of these songs, and it's just really allowed us to kind of listen to it with fresh ears, especially picking some of the songs, especially from the album, and trying to reinterpret that. And it's something that I was trying to say at least at the concert. I don't know how many people understood, but I was saying that I think the Beatles would be disappointed if we didn't also try to add something to it and push the envelope a little bit forward as well. So I think doing these songs and interpreting them in our own style and adding an Indian element, I think that's exactly what the Beatles would do. They would really kind of try to include something new and something different to the process. And I think that has been quite similar for us. Even when we were approaching the set, we definitely wanted to try and change things, change a few things up without preserving the integrity of the music, but also trying to add our voice, the very thing that has influenced all of us, and yeah, just try and create something special for whichever audience that we want to perform for.
Wonderful, because you worked together on that song, Across the Universe.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
And Neil worked on a different song. So before we move to Neil, I want to know behind the concept, behind the curtains, what was the creative approach to the curatorial approach towards the album? Did you contact, first of all, the selection? How did you choose musicians? They're all kinds. I think all have one thing in common. They're either Indian or diaspora Indian, right? And then also, did they somehow manage to listen to each other's songs, or how was that? And maybe they saw the whole bouquet of flowers towards the end. What was their reaction to the other songs and so on?
I definitely didn't want them to listen to the other songs, because about 2-3 of them wanted to do the same song.
I guess so. That's why I asked you. Yeah.
There were a couple of friends of mine in India, Anurag Rao and Ban Chakraborty. They were the coordination points, and I had my own ideas as well in terms of reaching out to artists. So, for instance, with Mali, I read about her, I think, the Rolling Stone India. She talked about the story she just said about the T-shirt. I said, that's really interesting. So I told one of the A&R coordinators who coordinated the album in Bombay, I said, listen, there's a girl called Mali, sounds really interesting, can you track her down? And then I phoned up Tejas, who I'd known before, because I tried to sign him on, but he went elsewhere. And I said, listen, there's this girl called Mali, by the way. He said, yeah, she's a friend of mine. She's here. It's so weird. So she was actually taking a call from one of the two people in Bombay when I spoke to her, literally at the same time. It was very weird. And I left them, I think, I don't know whether I chose the song for them or they came up, I can't remember that aspect, but they did such a great version of it. And then, we on each of the songs, they were all basically fine, but sometimes I'd say, listen, can you give it a little more Indian influence, or do you think you can have a different instrument? Because I was mindful of the fact that there were a lot of certain types of instruments So I said, well, can you maybe use a violin on this, or can you do a flute on that, an Indian flute? And it was really to give it a subtle feel. Some of the songs like we did with, there was one song by Vishal Dadlani, who's a huge singer in India. We did Revolution. And a guitarist by the name of Warren Mendonça, who's a brilliant guitarist, brilliant blues and rock guitarist. In fact, I played with his father in the 70s,
Wow.
probably funny enough. And he was just brilliant. And then Neil came about because of one of the two A&R coordinators in Bombay. They were his contact, and that's how that came about. And again, I said, I wanted someone who could play the guitar, but it sounded like a sitar in terms of the feel and the mood. And that's exactly what he brought to the table. It was as simple as that. There wasn't a big game plan, but it was just.
But you had some stars, or you had to get some prestigious musicians like Anushka Shankar, Vishal, Kashkal. So some big names are in there as well.
Yeah.
Were they more difficult, or did they jump on board on the?
No, they basically. They pleaded to be on the album. No, it was we had Farhan Akhtar, who's actually who's a film star, but he's a rocker as well, And the album wasn't for an Indian market; it was for a world market, not world music, but for a world market. And I think we had like certain people who were quite mainstream. We had some people who were on the edge of creativity, like Kisnuka, who opens the album, Tomorrow Never Knows. He did a great version of that song. So there were different styles within the Indian umbrella element, As I said, there were a couple of songs that I left off because it didn't kind of gel with the overall flow of the album. So I've got a couple of songs left behind.
Well, I'm glad you kept that connection of George also lives through Anushka's version of Inner Light, which is beautiful. Classical music is there as well.
That was a beautiful arrangement. I have to say that Kash and the team that were there, it was just beautiful.
So collaboration of classical musicians and pop, even beyond electronic music. The range of music is
amazing. I mean, Guillermo, if I may say, when Reynolds told me that he was going to do an album along with the film, I said, wow, it's a fantastic idea, really, because I how many, films have an album along with it? And this was the book, the film, and the album.
And now it's an exhibition.
And now the exhibition. And when I heard the music, it was astonishing, because the range of music is just astonishing. The number of people Reynolds managed to get together and create that. I mean, I think it's unique. It's going to be written about much, much later. Many, many years later, they are going to look back at the film, of course, but also the album. Because I don't think too many albums like this have existed. If you look at the kind of range of music and all being brought together by the Beatles. I mean, I think the Beatles would have been proud of this.
And specifically produced. It's not like we're picking songs that already exist. We have to highlight that. It's actually being produced for this album. Neil, when you, coming back to the artists, don't mind. Neil, how did you react to the invitation of, and were you given the song to play, or did you have freedom to choose which one you wanted to do? How was your
Well, it was one fine day that I got a call from Ban. He asked me if I would be okay to produce 2 songs by the Beatles. I was like, what you saying, man? What do you mean by would you be okay? I said, of course I'll be on top of the world to do something like this, And cutting the long story short, I was given these 2 songs, Sexy Sadie and I Will, to reinterpret and reproduce. And It was a fantastic experience because for me, Beatles music is pretty much where Bach's music is to me, or like amazing throughput music to me. I mean, high quality music of the highest quality. I believe that this music is going to survive another 10,000 years.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I believe. So belief is so. So getting to reinterpret two Beatles songs was like it was something from the universe. And I'm a huge Beatles fan. I think I know most of their songs. And I didn't study music in a music school or anything, but we grew up. I grew up in Kolkata, and we were Western music practitioners there. So our musical training structure was a little different. You would end up playing in clubs, in hotels and stuff like that. And there, the kind of music that was accepted was, like music that came from the West. So we would, and that's where our learning took place, right? We would have to play like long dance nights and stuff. And so we have to learn like tons of songs. And so that was one part of our musical education.
In the 80s?
I was 90s. 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 Yeah, 90s. Through the 90s, I was playing in Kolkata, but eventually I went off to make my original music in Bangla. I mean, that's a different thing. But which had all the influences. And
so how many? No, just to tag on. Would you say the influence of Beatles on Indian pop music is diluted, or are there also still rock bands doing versions of the Beatles like you have in the rest of the world? In Spain, there are at least 2 or 3. In the UK, there are. I mean, of course, there are many ways of. If we talk about influence, it's not just doing a cover. Do you think your generation of
Of course, we used to play "Come Together." We used to play. I saw her standing there. We used to play. She came in through the bathroom window. We used to play like a whole lot of Beatles songs. We used to play it well,
I suppose. Great. So we come to the present. We're slowly coming to the end of the webinar. This is today's 27th October 2021 for the records. For the record, we have this exhibition which is on till the 7th of November at Casa de India. If you still want to come to Spain, Valladolid, it's still on till the 7th of November. We have programmed a number of online webinars as part of this exhibition process. The musicians are going on tour. I believe you're going to Mallorca Evolution Film Festival along with the film. Ajoy and Pete will accompany the musicians, where we will have the screening in Palma de Mallorca and the concert on 1st of November. So you can also come along, and maybe that's another beautiful destination viewers would like to visit, especially if you're not in India. That's going to be a little difficult, too far away, but even from the UK or Spain. And what's next? What's the next step? I think we should put together a tour in Europe, maybe take the exhibition elsewhere, and the tour. Germany is calling. That's where everything started, in Hamburg. We have possibilities, I mean, boundless. Let's see how it works. What do you have in mind?
The great thing is that there's a live opportunity for the musicians to go around touring this concert. I think last night, where they got a standing ovation, was just fantastic. With there were probably about 400 people there or more who loved it. So it was really the blueprint to come back to Spain, to probably do 5-6 more shows next year, and then I've got interest in Paris, in Greece as well, and then from there in Germany as well. So there are things, we can take the exhibition, we can take the live opportunity, we want to go to India to do Beatles and India concerts in India as well. It's just finding the right partners. We've got interest in Mexico. So, you know, it's all opening up, you know, and thanks to you as well with the exhibition and really putting this all together against all odds. I mean, you know, it was incredible. And the exhibition here is just wonderful. People are coming to Madrid. They should take a train ride. It's an hour away and come and visit this place. It's really inspiring. And if you mildly like the Beatles, you should come over here. But there's a common thread between all of us here. You know, Ajoy being a rebel. I discovered the Beatles when I was like 9 years old, and I knew when I was 10 years old, I just wanted to be in the music industry, and that was it. You know, and I didn't go to university, you know, but all I knew was I wanted to be in music, and essentially because of the Beatles and a lot of the bands of the 60s. And I've been a friend of Pete's for about well over 40 years. We used to work together in a record store in London. Wow. And so, you know, we literally worked together for probably over 40 years. So there's this love for the project and being fans helped a lot as well, you know. So,
well, I mean, you know, one thing which I want to add, that as an Indian, I feel very proud of what you've done, really, in this exhibition. And I think this should be a model of what India can do across the world. If we can replicate this, it is just fantastic, because I think India has played such a key role in not only its own culture, but also influencing, you know, the world. I mean, the Indian civilization has influenced the world, and I think we need to showcase that. And I think that this exhibition and the film, the album, everything is all a part of this. And so I really, as an Indian, I feel really proud at this moment.
And as you said, indirectly, when you look back, one thing I took away from the film, in doing the film, is that the Beatles, along with Ravi Shankar and Maharishi, were kind of responsible for the globalization of Indian culture, if you look back.
Absolutely.
Not totally, but a large part.
This
space,
when
you think about it.
This auditorium is called the Ravi Shankar Auditorium. We were so privileged to have Ravi Shankar Guruji on our honorary board. Now it's Sukanya Shankar who plays that role, collaborating with Casa de India. We also have a beautiful sitar of Ravi Shankar upstairs, and a lot of the elements that were donated by the family are on permanent exhibition upstairs. The whole section is on George and Ravi Shankar's relationship. And we also celebrate 50 years of the Concert for Bangladesh, which was the first benefit concert. So more events around these themes will be coming in the next few weeks and months, and we'll extend our celebration of the Beatles and India towards spring as well, with the official release of the film in Spain. And there's plenty of more to talk about. So stay with us and come and see the center. Even after the exhibition is on, we want to do a whole series on Rabindranath Tagore as well. India, love for India, passion for India, Casa de India. Thank you very much for all the viewers, wherever you are, in Spain, UK, India, and to our friends at the Nehru Center. Good luck in the coming months and years, as well as the Indian music experience. A wonderful museum, the only music instrument collection, and in general, music museum in India. I strongly recommend you visit in Bangalore, also our partners over there. Please join us at the forthcoming events jointly organized also with the Nehru Center. And to all of you, have good luck on your tour, and I hope you get a hang of the Spanish culture.
Thanks for bringing us out here.
Thank you for having us.
And we look forward to your next tour next year, now that we know, we've already tested the ground. And it's a real pleasure. Reynold, I'm very happy you're finally able to come. It was not easy. I know you're very, very busy in London. And London is always busy and difficult to get out of. And Ajoy for coming all the way from India. We've dreamt about this moment. The team is here. And of course, Pete, for your all your help and your being there whenever we needed you throughout this process, because we've actually coordinated this very much with you. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Estamos al final de la sesión, que ha sido un honor tener aquí en la Casa de la India como parte del Seminci, la 66 edición del Festival Internacional de Valladolid. Una edición especial porque celebra los Beatles, Beatles Forever, ayer, que tuvo lugar en varios cines de la ciudad, en concreto Sala Fundos, con la proyección de la película y el concierto en la feria de muestras. Espero que los espectadores puedan seguir viendo estas películas cuando lleguen a las salas comerciales. Muchas gracias. También doy agradecimiento a Contracorriente y a Disc Media, respectivamente la distribuidora de la película y del álbum musical. Hasta pronto y nos vemos en breve. Muchas gracias. Goodbye. Namaste.